think it's funny.
But for that, your friends rejected you. They didn't like you falling on your face in public.
No. Oh, no.
So they ran from you. How did that affect you as you moved into your teenage years? How did all that roll out?
Well, it was hard. You realize at a very young age that there are people who put a lot of emphasis on your appearance and how you should look, less than your character. And we ended up changing schools, and my mom opened up a business and got off of welfare, and so financially things got better for us. But unfortunately, when I was in 4th grade, my body sort of betrayed me a little bit, and I suddenly grew up, and I was 5'6" and fully developed at age 9 in 4th grade. I was taller than the teacher, and people would sometimes mistake me for a teacher at our school, which was difficult in the fact that when you're that age, to be different it is not a good thing, and kids can be very creative in the things that they say and the way that they treat you.
Cruel creativity.
Cruel, yes. And I mean, I was widely known as the ugliest girl in school, and the one that people didn't really want to be friends with, and it was hard. And my teachers were hard on me because even though they knew I was 9 or 10, because of my appearance, they expected more from me. And so people a lot of the time were very hard. They didn't understand why I acted like a 9-year-old when I looked like I was about 17.
So what happened as you got to the emotional baggage, everything else? How far, how dark did it feel for you as you pressed on to your 7th, 8th grade type years?
Well, in 7th grade, we moved a lot. We moved a lot when I was growing up. That's kind of the whole theme of this whole thing. My mother was kind of the type of person who would think that the grass was greener somewhere else, and we would just pack up the car and move. And so we moved when I was in 7th grade to California, which I was excited. I thought it's a fresh start. Kids are starting to grow taller as well. They're catching up to me, and life will be better. And I got to California, and I didn't fit in at all. I studied hard, and that was not a positive thing in their eyes. And I'm very pale, and here it doesn't matter because everyone's really pale, but in California it's not the case, and so they used to call me whitey and albino, and it was a really, really difficult time. I guess in my mind I didn't know Christ. I didn't know that there was a hope. I felt like my parents were disappointed because of my appearance and because I just was such a misfit and so awkward. And I felt like the kids didn't accept me. By the time I was in 8th grade, I was severely depressed, and I became suicidal. I missed a lot of school that year. I didn't really hide the fact that I was struggling, but I did try to lay low just in general. I wore a lot of black. I didn't participate in any extracurricular activities. I didn't sing because that was something that made me stand out. And when you're trying to not be a target, and I was always a target anyway, but when you're trying not to be a target, that was something I didn't want to do, so I didn't sing for several years actually at all.
So you went from pretty princess to hide in a corner, if I can hide in a corner.
Yeah.
That's a pretty stark shift in life.
Yeah.
So how did it affect you? You were sharing with me that Andy noticed one of your most private wounds, because we hide our wounds. We don't want these wounds to be known. She would not be talking about this if we hadn't had coffee beforehand. And so wounds we hide, and you tried to hide some big wounds.
We did. Well, and I became a Christian at 16. But what I'm sure most of you understand is that becoming a Christian and really taking on that faith is an amazing, life-changing experience, but that doesn't make all of the pain or all of the bad things in your life suddenly go away or be forgotten or make you suddenly incredibly well-adjusted. And I was lonely for a long time just growing up, and I did develop not a very healthy relationship with food because that was always there, and I knew what to expect from it. And so at one point I was up to about 320 pounds, and I remember watching a video of myself on stage and seeing what I looked like and knowing that I needed to make a change just in order to live. And so I lost lots of weight, and I moved to England, and it was great because no one knew anything about me there, and I could just really try to find out who I was. And I met Andy, my husband. We were just friends and then dating at the time, and there was a lot with him that I didn't share with him because I thought that he would never accept me if he knew who I really am or where I've really been. And when you're really overweight and you're young, you get stretch marks. And I had stretch marks on my arms. And I mean, they're not really noticeable, but they're there. And Andy used to always say, I like those marks on your arm. And I just thought, oh, you big dummy, you don't even know what those are, obviously, because you wouldn't be saying that. And so I was like, oh, that's great, don't look at them. And so it was so much so that when he first came back to America for his first visit to visit my family, I called him, and this was a big deal, and I said, you have to get rid of any picture of me looking overweight, looking awkward. You have to get rid of all of these pictures, because I thought, if he knows this about me, and if he knows who I really am and what I really am, or what I've been, that he would never accept that and he wouldn't want to be with me. And I was convinced that this was the case. And so my mom wasn't happy. My dad's like, that's fine, so got rid of him. And came back. Everything was fine. Well, after about a year after we were dating, I thought, I need to tell him, just because there are a lot of things about me that once you really get to know me, you might not understand if you don't know where I've been. So I decided to tell him. And I was very emotional. It was this very big deal. And I told him. And he's like, I know. And I said, well, how do you know? And he said, well, Amy, you have stretch marks on your arms. He's like, I know what those are. And then I said, well, why didn't you tell me before? And he said, well, I don't know. And he said, I like them. It shows that you've been somewhere. And for me, that was a huge deal to find acceptance. Because even in my church back home, I never really felt like I was fully accepted for who I was or anyone had really known me. I still kind of didn't know what to think, but I remember we went home for the second visit. We were still dating. And my mom said, you have to show me this video that, the whole thing where I looked really bad, or I felt I looked really bad. And so finally, I decided to show it to him, and I just cringed the whole time. And we watched it, and he said, I think you were pretty cute back then. And I thought, liar. And I remember he said, now there are no more secrets between us. And the next day he proposed, which was massive because it really showed me that he knew me, and he does know where I'm coming from, and he knows who I am, and he accepts those things about me that I never really felt like I could accept about myself. And all these life experiences, he doesn't love me in spite of them. He loves me because of them and because of the person who they made me into. And that's really given me a lot of insight into God's unconditional love, because I didn't, you hear about unconditional love and you hear that God loves you in spite of everything, but sometimes it's hard to fully understand that unless you've experienced in your life and you think, well, God loves everything, but I really messed this up, or, I'm nobody and I'm a loser. And I spent a lot of years of my life feeling that way. And so, I realize now that God does have unconditional love, and he creates us into these people, and we have these experiences in our lives not to punish us or not because there's something wrong with us, but because God has a person that he wants to create you to be. And sometimes it's just a little more painful than other times, but it's all good.
Can you say today that you're happy with the wounds? Can you say the wounds have played a purpose and a role in your life that you can now accept?
I can. I can't honestly say that I never feel pain from them still. And then sometimes I'll hear things and it'll take me right back to those years. But I wouldn't give it up for anything, because it's part of me and it's part of who I am, and it's made me into the person I am. And I wouldn't want to change that.
Okay. Thank you. We all have wounds. Some of them heal quick, some of them don't heal quick. Some of them, they'll never go away. But the question is, what is keeping you from really believing about this power of the resurrection that we've been talking about? What keeps you from really believing that there is a transformation as a possibility? Because you don't see the wounds. The church covers them up, we cover them up, no one talks about them, we ignore them. We squirm when anyone ever would dare ask me about it. See, the truth is that your wounds, your personal wounds, will prove the power of the resurrection. People are waiting with questions. People are looking for someone to say, I want to believe, but I can't see this man called Jesus. He lived 2,000 years ago. The apostles, the disciples, the crowd saw him, but I can't physically see this one called Jesus.